Imagine not being Leeds, not feeling this pain, not dancing through thunder, not walking through rain. Imagine not rising with fists in the air when the world turned its back and no one would care. We've lived in the ashes, we've drowned in defeat, but still we stand proud on our battered old feet. Imagine not loving with all that you are. Imagine not being Leeds.
We love you, Leeds, Leeds, Leeds.
We love you, Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. Yes, we do. So, now then, welcome back to Imagine Not Being Leeds. I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Something I've had an idea for a few days, if not weeks, to be honest. I just didn't know the best way to sort of do it. But I decided to do it as a pre-record and put it out. And I'd love to get your comments and get into a bit of a discussion in the comment box of whether you think I'm right or wrong and what you would have said. So, I've been looking at, obviously, the Bielsa 1920 winning season, and obviously Farke's 24-25 winning season. Farke gets compared to Bielsa in everything he does. Bielsa has been the measuring stick for everyone post Bielsa, and it's a very difficult sort of level to be measured against, because for us he's immortalised as a Leeds legend and God to a lot of us. He's just over my shoulder there, as you can see. The kids think he's my granddad, and I won't tell him he isn't. So yeah, it's a difficult one to sort of compare them, because there's a lot of context to be applied in terms of, you know, Farke's inherited Leeds in a much healthier space financially. The squad he had when he took over from being relegated to the Premier, there's a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong, he's had 2 rebuilds as Farke these last 2 seasons. But Bielsa had, you know, mid-table championship side, a club that didn't have a lot of money because it hadn't been in the Premier League for 16 years. Farke, you know, we had 3 years as a Premier League side when Farke took over. Although on the other flip of that, Farke had a lot of pressure. Farke had to get promotion within the first 2 seasons, and he has done. He's achieved that. Bielsa, as much as we hoped he'd change something, until we saw the way we played in the opening game under Bielsa, we had no clue. We knew we were getting an absolute icon of football, world renowned in his methods. But still, with Leeds United, we probably didn't see it coming. We probably didn't see what's happened since you know, in the last 5-6 seasons. It took us to a whole new level, brought the city back together, and made us, let's be fair, who we are now. The foundations what were put in place by Bielsa, and everything we achieve from here on in, we have Bielsa to thank for that, and for that reason, he'll be forever loved at Leeds United. So, regardless of how it ended, the fact we didn't get relegated the season he got sacked is massive. So he'll always be remembered, like I say, for nothing but good for Leeds. So that the comparing of them isn't always fair, but we're going to do that anyway. So we're going to actually go through the most played positions, players in certain positions of this season. Is fairly easy. It's a very unchanged side last year under Farke. But the Bielsa side, there were a few positions where the goalkeeper changed towards the end of the season. The left back spot had a mixture of a couple of players, but I've gone based on the players that played the most in each position. I've done a bit of research, which I don't normally do. So yeah, let's get into it. Goalkeeper. So this was a really difficult one. So Casilla played around 37-38 games before he got suspended for a racist remark made, and then he lost his place to Melier. Whether he did or not, I don't know, but I know the facts are he got a ban from the EFL, and he had to lose his place to Melier, who came in and did great, and then never lost that spot really, did he? That was him then for the next 5 seasons with Melier. And obviously Farke's goalkeeper for the majority of last season was Melier. I mean, I was contemplating having Melier as Bielsa and Darla was Farke, but it's not a true representation. You know, both only played about 8 games in both seasons, so it is Casilla versus Melier, and it's season by season. So was Kiko Casilla better in 1920 than what Melier won in 2020 in 24-25? Who am I picking for the combined 11 out of them two? It might be controversial getting into all legalities of it and stuff, but you've got to pick Casilla. before he got banned, he didn't make as many high-profile errors as Millier did last season. That's what I'm basing this on, the title-winning season. I would have to say Kiko Casilla was better than Millier, so I'm going to pick Casilla for the goalkeeper. Although it does pain me to say it, and I don't really know if I agree with it, but in terms of who was a better keeper out of those 2 seasons, it wasn't Millier, that's for sure. Moving on to the right-back spot, also a very tough one. I actually think these 2 players are very similar in the profile as a full-back, as a right-back. Ayling, absolute legend. It's hard to think about Luke Ayling and not smile. He's still a Leeds fan now. I think we'll see him at Ellen Road for year after year. He's stated he'll never move back down south. I think he loves the area. He's at Middlesbrough now. Highly thought of there. Twilight of his career. I expect to go to many dinners where Ayling's speaking, and a lot of that Bielsa side. It's that core group of that Bielsa side. You know, they've got a lot of fun years to come. You know, like dinners and guest speaking and stuff at Leeds United, and we've seen like with Beckford the sort of career he has now in media, being closely linked to LUTV and stuff, and anything Sky Sports wise what involves Leeds United is involved. And I expect your Aylings, you know, your Coopers, your Phillips, players like that, you know, when they do finally retire, there'll plenty of opportunity will come for them. Give us so many great moments to Ayling. The goal right before COVID, the pass to Pablo. He was outstanding. You know, he lost his legs towards the end of it, but Ayling in 1920 was by far one of our better players. Then you move on to Jayden Bogle, and similar, very similar, up and down that right hand side. Great defensively, although we got told by others he wasn't at that level, at Championship level. Fantastic defensively. Going forward, just like Ayling, he can do it all. They're very, very similar players for me. Very similar. Really good at getting to byline and crossing it in. Really good delivery too. So it's a very difficult one. And Jayden Bogle, obviously, he plays on. You've got the recency bias of him. You know how good he was. And Bogle, for me, were right up there, probably top 3, top 4 players this season. Been outstanding. Then you've got the flip side of that of Ayling, who plays on heartstrings a little bit. But for this one, I'm actually going to go Luke Ayling. I can't get out of my head, you know, the volley right before COVID. I can't get out of my head the pass to Pablo, like I've just said. And I think 1920 was one of his best seasons. And then when we stepped up to Premier League, you saw how good he was that season. There were rumours, talks of him being close to an England call-up, which may sound wild if looking back now, if you can't remember those talks. But is it wild when you think Bamford got an England cap? So he wasn't far off England contention. But 1920 were one of Ayling's best seasons, I think, as a professional footballer, and definitely at Leeds United. So I'm actually going to go Luke Ayling as right back. Right, moving on. So I've done a little bit of a jiggle here in defence to fit my narrative. So you've got Ben White, who played on the right side of defence against Liam Cooper. But I've switched them. Round. So my centre-back pairing has to be these 2 players. So you've got White against Pascal Struijk. Because I can't put White against Rodon. I can't pick one. I can pick one. It would have been Rodon, but technically I'm switching it to fit my narrative. So White against Struijk. Ben White wins every day long. All day long. I love Struijk. Struijk's outstanding. I hope we keep Struijk. I think he's got every attribute, the profile of, you know, the sort of centre-half you want. We've seen him in Prem. He's done okay. I do really rate Struijk. But Ben White that season when he came to Leeds on loan, didn't really know much about him. The madness of Bielsa brought him in, and I think he was training with under 23s first. I think he was obviously on loan from Brighton, but he played at Newport County, I think, in League 1 or League 2 season before. And the next thing he's playing Championship side, replacing Pontus Jansson, who was a massive fan favourite year before at Leeds. Everyone remembers how you know, throw a bit of kit me, led it back and all that. Jansson, I love Pontus Jansson. It ended on a bit of a sour note. He goes to Brentford, and we bring in this kid who I'm a little bit annoyed with at time, thinking, you know, what's he going to be? Look at him, he's quite slight, he doesn't look physical. Like Pontus Jansson, I quite like physical centre-halves, no-nonsense centre-halves, and you're bringing in some young kid here who apparently can pass ball a bit. What a player. He's at Arsenal now, he's competing at the very top of the game. Played a lot of football at right back last couple of years, but Ben White, unreal that season, like unreal. I think he played every game, every league game, never got injured, quick. Probably best ball playing centre half I've seen at Leeds United for 20 years. Absolutely outstanding on both feet. Obviously Cooper played a massive part in how well he played that season. Having Cooper, that experience next to him, that can't be undervalued either. But Ben White over Struijk all day long. So I switched him around a little bit to fit my narrative. But so Ben White gets one of the centre back spots. So far it's 3-0 to Bielsa's side over Farke's. Moving on, Cooper v Rodon. So there's the switch right there. Cooper, absolute legend again, one of those cult heroes. Got a little bit of stick at times. League One Liam people, some sections of the fan group would say. I think it ended on a really positive note for him at Leeds United. I really do. I think it had gone a bit sour at times, but I think by the time he left, I was at the game when he was walking around the stadium with his family. I mean, it was a beautiful moment. He's very well respected at Leeds, to be honest. Obviously, we lost that playoff final, which were heartbreaking. He hasn't been massively involved that season under Farke, not massively. He had spells injured, didn't he? So he couldn't play many games, but it's been good for him to move on and get football elsewhere. Can't compete with Rodon. When you and I've switched it. He couldn't compete with Stroud, to be fair, for me either. So yeah, I have to say Cooper, Captain Cooper, loses out in this as well to Joe Rodon, who, let's be fair, is an absolute legend in the making. He's been outstanding as Rodon. I think the fee we got from Tottenham, it's nothing compared to the potential of this lad. I honestly, it's one of the players out of the full squad who I'm massively excited to see in Prem. It's another question mark against him. He's played in Prem before for Spurs. He hasn't played masses of games and minutes in Premier League, but his physicality, his speed, his recovery speed is just. I haven't seen no like it at Leeds. He's just so quick for a centre half. His reading of the game, the way he wins every ball, his headers. He never shuns out of a tackle. I think he's going to be at Leeds for many years to come, and he's the sort of player Leeds fans get behind. He's in that Pontus sort of mould, that Berardi mould. Strap him up with blood coming out of all his orifices. He'll just carry on. He'll keep playing ball. So, yeah, Joe Rodon for me. I'm picking him over Cooper. So it's a centre back pairing of White and Rodon. Could you imagine? That's just outstanding. And I'm very excited with the players Leeds are linked with, your Bijols and stuff of this world. If we can get someone like that to be partner Rodon going forward, Jesus, it'll be a madness. Anyways, moving on. Left back. So Stuart Dallas isn't actually on this list, and he played a lot of minutes. But in terms of keeping that one position, he didn't play more minutes in one position than his rival, so he isn't on this list. Stuart Dallas, one of my all-time favourite Leeds players, by the way. But Alioski played the majority of football at left back in that season. Also played left wing, but I think he pipped Dallas by quite a few games. I haven't got stats to hand, but he played the most games at left back. The season went up in 1920. Alioski, massive fan favourite. Actually got a lot of Leeds fans at the time saying he won't make the step up to Prem. I actually think he did alright. I actually think in the Prem that first season he must have done alright because he played a lot of minutes. We finished 9th. I remember him playing that bot. He was the one that assisted the goal for Dallas at City with the empty stands when we won at City, which were just unbelievable. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've celebrated as loud in my house as I did that game. It was unbelievable when Dallas went through and slotted it past the City keeper. But Alioski, fan favourite. Bit gutted he left, to be fair, at the time. I would have liked him to stick around, but on the other side of that, you've got Firpo. He replaced Alioski. Came in from with that pedigree. He'd been at Betis, been at Barcelona. Expecting massive things, and I think that first year or two with Firpo, we all sort of looked at it and said we should have kept Alioski. I mean, I did. I thought Alioski was a better option than Firpo after seeing Firpo. But then, comparing him that season to this season, I think Firpo wins for me. I think Firpo has just been outstanding, the amount of goals and assists that he does create. He sort of gets given that licence to go forward. We know Alioski as well. You could probably say Firpo and Alioski aren't natural left backs in a 4. They probably suit, maybe playing a back 5 or a back 3 with wing backs either side. Very forward thinking, as is Alioski. Alioski and Firpo wouldn't look out of place playing left wing, and I know Alioski did that quite a bit. Although we haven't seen Firpo in that role, he practically plays that role, if not a 9 out of 10 most weeks for Leeds. In the Champo, hasn't he? But yeah, I think Firpo gets the nod for me ahead of Alioski. I think he's been great value this season, and I'm gutted to see him go. It looks like he's going to go to Betis, which is a shame, but I've sort of always thought that might happen with Firpo. So he goes with my best wishes, as he does most Leeds fans. Moving on, right wing. We've got Helder Costa, who was signed from Wolves for, at the time, I think like 15-16 million. 16 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 got him off the back of a couple of injuries. But prior to that, when he was flying at Wolves, Chelsea wanted him. I was quite excited with the signing of Helder Costa. He come in that season after obviously failing against Derby in the semi-finals the year before, and yeah, I thought he was all right. To be fair, he didn't set the world alight. It was all right. It wasn't a bad option. But you think some of the wing options we had the year before, we had like Jack Clark coming in for games. It felt like we'd got a real decent player there. That level, even with his injuries. So Helder Costa were good value. Definitely a threatening player for us. Got goals, got assisted, all right. But again, you can't compete with James for me player of the year by far in the division. Definitely Leeds' best player. He won Leeds' best player as well at the awards, and rightly so. Dan James has been outstanding. The goals and assists he's got this season are phenomenal. The goals the season he got the year before that were phenomenal. He just had more injuries. And another one in the road on mould. Really excited to see how he does in Prem. I think James can step up. I think he's improved as a player. As has Rodon since his time in Prem. As has Firpo. I think he'd do okay in Prem. But yeah, going back to Dan James, I think last season outstanding. You won't see many players have that level of contribution to a side, I don't think, going forward in Championship as he did for Leeds. I think everything Leeds do, what is good, comes from, comes through that right hand side with Bogle and James. That right hand side at times this season, what were unreal. You won't see many edges in Championship do what them two did. The overlaps, the underlaps, they knew each other's game inside out, and Bogle were a massive reason James looked good last season, and James were a massive reason Bogle looked good. When one of them were missing, mainly James for odd game, they didn't look as fluent down that side. But yeah, Dan James for me, 100% better than Helder Costa. So he goes into the side. Right, moving into midfield. So I know under Bielsa, we tend to play like a 4-1-4-1, but for the purposes of this video, it's a 4-2-3-1. So you're going to have two midfielders, CMs rather than DMs, and you're going to have a 10 in there as well. So Phillips v Ampadu. Similar players, I think. We saw Phillips filling at centre-half at times when we were short, just like we've seen Ampadu. I think Ampadu was obviously the more capable player at centre-half in the Championship than Phillips was. I think when you compare the season, Phillips had 19-20 against Ampadu's 24-25. I think Phillips was probably the main reason we got promoted for me. Everything ran through Phillips. The way he broke play up, his passing accuracy, his long ball accuracy. It was just phenomenal. He'd drop deep, he'd set the ball off the defender, sometimes a goalkeeper, and he'd spray balls left, right and centre. And he was the heartbeat of that side. I didn't see it coming. Bielsa made Phillips the player that we all saw for those 2 or 3 seasons. Since then, he hasn't been the same player, just like he wasn't before Bielsa come. Can he get to those heights again? I'm not too sure. His injuries and form shows probably not. There's only been one other manager who's been able to get a tune out of Phillips, and that was Gareth Southgate. Southgate and Bielsa definitely get the best out of Phillips. Going on to Ampadu as captain, very important, and we saw last season one of the most important players at Leeds, whether you think he's a great player or not. The fact that when he doesn't play, in away games especially, we struggle to win games. That's factual. We struggle to win games when Ampadu's not playing. When it comes to missing on away games, it's just it proves it when you look at the stats of last season. So many points dropped in the games where Ampadu don't play. When Ampadu comes back in, we start winning games again. So that can't be underestimated how vital he's been to the side, and which is a reason why I kind of think I can't see past an Ampadu and Tanaka starting midfield in the Prem, which maybe with the links of Diarra and other players, Longstaff, and that would be linked with. Maybe that won't happen. Maybe Ampadu may have to drop to the bench and we have to pass that captain's armband to someone else. It's going to be very interesting to sort of see how that goes. But comparing Phillips to Ampadu that season to this season, I think it's chalk and cheese. I think Phillips beats Ampadu hands down into the combined starting 11 of Bielsa and Farke's championship winning team. So yeah, that one goes to Calvin Phillips. So moving on to the midfield partner, Klich v Tanaka. So like I say, a bit different because I know Klich's a little bit more advanced, but if I'm going to compare out the midfielders, I think Phillips and Ampadu is a decent comparison, and I think then that just leaves Klich v Tanaka really. Klich, absolutely loved him. Fan favourite again. Everything I want as a Leeds United player, he had flair, shithousery, just as did Alioski. Shithousery at the top level. I love the banter he had. I love how he was a bit of a joker. I love the graffiti he did at Ellen Road. I love him sat there with a cigar after we won league. I love all that. But most importantly, the player. He was one of those players again. We've seen it last season with certain players not working to start with and coming back. he was out on loan under previous managers. As soon as Bielsa could, we brought him back into the fold, and I didn't think he had a future at Leeds. And very quickly, it proved he was one of our best attacking players under Bielsa. He was outstanding. He could play a little bit deeper, mainly going forward. What his biggest threat. Really good passing range. When we talk about unlocking a defence, Click had all that in abundance. And when we also speak about being able to shoot from outside the box, we haven't had a player like that since, really. A midfielder who actually shoots from outside the box, someone who can hit top bins on a regular basis. That will Click anywhere on the pitch. He could pop up with a shot from anywhere and it'd go in. So yeah, I love Click. Absolutely loved him. But unfortunately for him, he's getting compared to Tanaka last season. In the 1920 version of Click, totally different players. It's hard to compare every player. This is the closest I could sort of get. Compare him with Tanaka. Tanaka was just unbelievable level in Championship, wasn't it? Unbelievable. Tanaka was a lot of people's player of the season. He can do it all in there for me. You know, I think as he progresses in his career, you could even see him further forward. He's played a little bit further back probably for Leeds and probably what I think his best position is. I think we've seen it at times this season with 3 goals I think he scored. He has got that click about him. We saw it away at Hull, top bins, very Click-esque to be fair, that goal. Onto his right foot, top corner, no stopping it. He started popping up with goals as the season was drawing to a close. And I think Tanaka last season were better than what Click won in 1920. Albeit different players. Actually, Tanaka has got that shot in him that we saw Click do many times. So, yeah, Tanaka wins that one. Right, moving on, left wing. Harrison, who's currently a Leeds United player again, believe it or not. Jack Harrison. Hot and cold Harrison. He's got a world-class first touch. World-class first touch. And then League Two final delivery for me. It's mad that he's so good in one aspect, which if you've got a great first touch, it gives you a lot more time at ball. It gives you a lot more chance to create something because you haven't had to take that extra second to compose yourself because you've stopped the ball dead, and he's got that in abundance. His numbers, which I haven't got to hand, were always all right at Leeds, but he used to have cluster performances where he'd go on a 7, 8, 9, 10 match run without an assist or a goal, and then he might get a cluster of a couple of goals and a couple of assists over 5 or 6 games, and his numbers come end of the season weren't bad. But the eye test on Harrison for me was always bad. I didn't feel like on the eye test he played well many times. Although his work rate were always up there, you know, he always dug in, he always played, left it all out on the field, let's say. He had a really good engine on him, which has seen him have 3 seasons in the Premier League, 2 seasons in the Premier League, since we got relegated. So yeah, for me, there's no comparison with Solomon though. You compared him with Solomon. Solomon was that X factor player for us, which I also thought we had in abundance with Ramazani underneath him. I think Solomon were lucky to get that Ramazani got injured early on. It gives Solomon that chance to get in there over those 4 games, and then he never lost his shirt. He also got the goal at Plymouth that won us the title, which, again, if he doesn't come back to Leeds, which it looks like he's going to stay at Spurs and fight for his place, fair play to him. He'll fancy his chances there. He'll fancy his chances in a side that finished 17th. Yeah, they're in Champions League, they won Europa League. But last season was a strange one for Tottenham. Winning the Europa League, like I say, but also finishing 17th. Lost a lot of games last season. He'll probably look at that side and think, I can get in that side. They're in Champions League, so I understand it. But at Leeds United last season, it was our X Factor player. His assist, cutting onto that right foot, delivering ball after ball. The Nonto header in one of the last few games at home stands out. I think it was against Stoke. He's just an outstanding player, is Solomon, and whatever he does with his career now, that one season at Leeds, like Ben White, that one season on loan at Leeds, it breaks you out if you can't get him over the line and sign him on a permanent. But to go with your best wishes, and I hope he gets that, continues that form into Premier League. But that season, Solomon was outstanding, so Solomon obviously gets a nod over Harrison. Moving on to the 10 role. Don't even need to go through it really. Aronson for Farke. Engine on him, work rate on him. A bit like Jack Harrison, very similar to Jack Harrison, just a different position. Everything you want for a footballer, effort-wise, all about the team. But technically, gifted. He is not creative. He is not, and I don't want him to be our 10 next season. I don't mind him sticking around. He seems a nice lad. Seems a really nice lad, to be fair, does Brendan Aronson. We overpaid for him. He's one of the deals that, we've still got him round. Can he evolve? Can he grow? Maybe, I don't know. I don't think you can put something in someone that's not there, and I don't think that creative spark and that creative eye will ever be there on Brendan. So I would say we overpaid for him, and I would love to get him off our books now if we can get a decent fee for him, which I would have thought stats wise he'll look enough. Aside, I'll look at him enough to think he's worth the gamble, but he'd have to go to another country for me. Maybe back to Bundesliga where he was last year before last, but yeah, for me in the 10, he just played a key role at times in why we were so good, winning the ball high up. That's his sort of game. But for me, a 10, I will always compare every 10 Leeds I've now to Pablo. I know Pablo played a bit on the right at times as well under Bielsa, but for the purpose of this video, again, a 10, when we speak about a 10, we speak about the Buendias and the Hamers or whoever we link with, we always mention what we do for a prime Pablo. And the prime Pablo, in terms of age, we didn't even have at Leeds United. He didn't sign, I think he signed for Leeds from Qatar in his 30s. Bit of a weird signing under Monk. We know what he could do at Swansea. We know he was a top player. Valencia back in the day with David Vias and people like that. He's mixed it in some great company, but he was at the twilight of his career. Did I think we'd get, 6 seasons out of him? No. But wow, what a player. What a player. We just got it in Premier League that his age probably caught up with him a little bit and he couldn't be the player we saw in the Championship again. It showed the level up because the year before the 1920 season, Pablo was outstanding. He got the goal at Swansea, which we will always remember as a Leeds fan. Key moments you remember from games, you remember where you were, what you were doing, and that's one of those moments. The goal at Swansea, we knew we were up at that point, we knew we were done. And Ailing, who was obviously made this side, he was a massive part of that. The run, marauding down the right hand side, cutting it back, takes a little deflection. He has to readjust his body, just Pablo in that moment, and sort of just neatly places it rather than scuffs it in bottom right corner. Keeper has no chance. But yeah, Pablo, we all know what he provided, the assists. He was just a maverick. And for him to be able to play at that level up until the age he did, fair play to him. And I don't want to be a bit too strong on this, but maybe a statue for a Bielsa and a Pablo wouldn't look out of place at Ellen Road. Like Pablo, you can't speak about Pablo and not smile. He's just, what a player Pablo was. I loved him, love him still, and I hope he's one of those ex-players who goes on to become a good manager, and maybe we'll see him back at Leeds United one day. He's learned from the best under Bielsa, hasn't he? The knowledge that some of these players who will go into management, and Pablo has done that. Cooper's flirted with the idea. The messages, the methods, the whole philosophies of some of these managers you work under, you take weird, don't you, when you're playing career and then going into management. And any of these players that played under Bielsa for a few years, there's no better one to learn off, really. And it's exciting to think of potentially having someone like that in the future in and around the club who is of that Bielsa era. So yeah, Pablo gets the number 10 spot for me. Then moving on, Paddy Bamford, still here now. He's now, this season, a third choice, really, wasn't he? Sort of got into second choice behind Pido with the demise of young Mateo Joseph behind me. Bamford had a key role towards the end of the season, coming off the bench and seeing games out, and I didn't think he had a role at the club beyond a couple of years ago, to be fair. He's on about trying to get back into England contention this season with Leeds United as a Premier League side. I sort of thought his time at Leeds was done, like I say, but he sort of proved he's got, if he's fit and he can get him on the pitch, he's got some sort of worth at Leeds United. Do I think he's going to cut it next year in the Premier? I expect him to stay now, I do. I don't expect him to stay. I'm not too sure we'll see much of Bamford next season, but if he's in and around and he comes on pitch, I'll support him. And like I say, surprised me towards the end of last season. Stepping up again's a big ask, though. It's a big ask. But obviously Pirro this season, again, big question marks. Can he do it in Prem? I think he'll do okay in the Prem. Okay, is that good enough for Leeds United to stay up? Probably not. We need a striker to be better than okay. He's going to have to get some vital goals. I don't think Pirro gets anywhere near how many goals he got last season. 16, 17, 18. Maybe, 19, I think. But can he get in between 10 and 15? Maybe, possibly. But he needs someone else to complement him. But when you compare the Pirro of 24, 25 to the Bamford of 19, 20, I think the whole profile of Bamford is a better fit. We see it at times now. The profile of Bamford, the way he runs in behind, the way he stretches the defenders, is a nuisance. He's physically can hold the ball up. Even this season, at times when he's come on, he's proved in certain aspects, in certain moments of the game, he can provide a little bit more than Pirro. Not many times, but we've seen it in odd game towards the latter end of the game. You go back to 1920, you go back 5 or 6 seasons, and before Bamford's injury started creeping in, I think you have to pick him I think you've got to pick Bamford. The 19-20 season, Bamford got 17 goals, so in and around Pirlo's numbers this season. But I think his all-round game, if you had Bamford of 19-20 playing now, last season, I think he'd have had a better season than Pirlo, and I thought Pirlo were fine. But I think Bamford has more in his arsenal than what Pirlo does. If you compared the prime versions of him, and the 19-20 version of Bamford going into 2021, Villa in the Premier League away, etc., that those 2 seasons, behind closed doors, granted at times in 19-20 season, but either way, those 2 seasons were probably the pinnacle of Bamford's career. And like Phillips, he'll probably never get anywhere near it again. Pirlo still has room to grow. He's still only young, mid-23, 24, Pirlo. Great goal scorer at Championship level, still to be proven in Premier League level, which we know Bamford did one season. He got 16 goals, I think, that first Premier League season, finished 9th. But yeah, 19-20 Bamford for me would get the nod over 24-25 Pirlo. Close, but just more to him. So yeah, so the starting lineup, if this were ever possible, the prime versions. So when you compare the 19-20 Bielsa side against the 24-25 Farke side, you've got in goal Kiko Casilla, even though it pains me to say it, he was better than Melier. Right back Luke Ayling. A centre-back pairing of White and Rodon with Junior Firpo at left-back. You've got Dan James out on the right. You've got Calvin Phillips, Tanaka in the midfield with Solomon out on the left. And then you've got Pablo in the 10 with Patrick Bamford occupying the defenders up in that 9 spot. So yeah, I'd love you to let me know in the comment section if you agree with my picks. Do you think there's any there that I'm way off the mark with? Like I said, there's some players in there like Stewie D and others that, based on the amount of games and minutes they played and keep in the positions, they got pipped by other players in those positions. Like I say, he played a lot at left back, but not as many as Alioski. He played games in midfield, but not as much as Calvin and Click. So yeah, based on that, that's what I think. So let me know in the comment section below. Something a little bit different away from the transfer gossip. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you appreciated me actually doing a bit of digging for once and a bit of research and looking into stuff. Not much, but a little bit. It's just a bit of an opinion piece, you know me. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. Take care, everyone. Please stick a like if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you haven't seen me before, if you want to see more. And yeah, take care. See you soon.
Cheer the cop would sing for Speedo's magic on the wing. Oh, carry speed, you live on still, and every chant on every